everybody. Welcome back into Debate Night. We are back yet again with another great episode ahead of us. We are quickly approaching the first major of the season, which is very excited. If you don't count collegiate nationals, so actually second major of the season. But we've got some. That was a joke. To be clear, that was a joke. Anyways, hey, if they want to keep changing up all the majors, I'm just going to count whichever ones I want. We've got a few fun topics, some fan submissions, and should be a good show. And we'll get to introducing our guest today. Brodie Smith's here as always.
Yeah, man, the people here. There's a huge outcry on Spotify requests. I'm not really quite sure what's going on over there.
That's fair.
But I have to bring it up, man, of the people. It was like 3 or 4 top comments all asking about Spotify.
That is tough.
Apparently there are people out there that want to listen to this show, not just watch it. So shout out to all you people.
I can't hear you right now.
No,
I haven't been able to for like a month and a half, apparently.
That is true. I guess that is very true.
Hey, this week they can hear us. Well, we got it this week.
Also, we kind of all got called out too. They said this person said no good answers from the panel on the second question, which I believe was talking about the MPO and FPO situation. It's objectively obvious that the MPO is far more popular and therefore should be prioritized. A PR nightmare would be simply and quickly shut down with the simple statement, without MPO, the FPO DGPT tour could not and would not exist. Still, I enjoyed the show.
Yeah.
I think this person's missing.
That argument always goes well with WNBA and NBA.
What?
So let's just bring it to disc golf.
I think this person might be missing the point here a little bit.
They're living in a black and white world. It's just like, no, just say what you want, and they'll
made
accept
a top
it.
comment though.
That was the top. It had like 10 or 11 thumbs up. That had the most thumbs up.
The bar for top comment is pretty low.
This week there wasn't anything that jumped out.
I almost have enough YouTube channels with foundation in my personal to get a top comment. I might have to start some propaganda.
Yeah, you can start biasing it. Hunter's here after his computer took 13 minutes to reboot. That
was an unnecessary shot. For as far as they know, I'm here equally as everyone else. Yeah, I'm excited to be back. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say.
All right. Very well said from Hunter.
Wow.
Mike's here. Not a good golfer, says, because he shot an 82 today.
82 with 3 double bogeys.
Even
Mike,
better.
have you ever seen me golf, man? That hurts.
Don't watch the last video. It's
You beat me by 40.
Maybe you're left-handed. I'm left-handed. Try left-handed.
Oh,
maybe I'm lefty.
Gang.
Maybe I'm lefty.
That's fun.
Kelsey actually wanted to put on the video. I was like, "Are you sure about that?" She's like, "Yeah, let me watch it." After a couple holes, I was like, "I've seen enough. I got to get out of here."
When you texted me and said my swing looked like I was in a straitjacket, I might have never laughed harder in my life.
It's funny because I was telling Hunter,
funny.
I forgot that the video had come out, and so I thought you just texted that out of the blue. Like I was like, "Man." Like, what are we doing? It's just like,
was in a
did
dark
you
place
just think about it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Anyways, and Hannah is
say
also
it like it is, man.
Hannah is also joining us again. It's been a few weeks.
Yeah, I'm excited to be back. I do not golf. Like disc golf is the extent of my golf game, and I will leave it at that. I will leave the golfing to you. But yeah, I'm excited to be back, and I'm excited for tonight's questions.
I probably should be the same way, but you know.
All right, well, let's jump right into it. We're going to get straight to the juicy stuff here, starting with our first topic. So Abbie Wilson took to Facebook last week, tearing down the statements Jeff Spring made publicly on the Tour Life podcast, actually, regarding the protest at MCO that she conducted. What should the Pro Tour do next? Is it worth addressing these claims and potentially further extending the drama, or do they go silent and risk further scrutiny since they have been painted in the wrong in this situation? Kind of been the last ones painted in the wrong here. So, Brodie, what do you think?
Yeah, so we had Abbie on to basically share her perspective on what went down. Where she was basically saying things that are coming out from the Disc Golf Pro Tour aren't true. Then Jeff Spring reached out and said, "Hey, I would like to come on next week." So then he came on, and he basically was saying, these are all the things that Abbie said, and those things aren't true, and this is what happened. So yeah, and now I guess Abbie has now come back out and has gone through all the stuff that Jeff said on Tour Life and saying, no, this is really what's going down. So it's not a good situation. And really the thing that really sucks, I think, in all of this is I think the Disc Golf Pro Tour ultimately wants to do what Abbie Wilson wants, which is make it to where Natalie Ryan cannot compete in the women's division. However, their hands are tied at this point, and there's nothing they really can do. I know some people might push back on that and say, oh, they can do this, this, and this. They literally almost bankrupt themselves trying last year. So I think the big thing from this that really needs to happen is like going forward, because there were some things that I pushed back a little bit in that interview with Jeff Spring that I didn't think was happening. And so to me, I think moving forward, the communication with the Disc Golf Pro Tour needs to be locked in, because right now it does seem like certain people are saying stuff and not communicating it. And the information is not coming out correctly. So I would say if I'm the Disc Golf Pro Tour, I think moving forward, we really got to button everything up.
Yeah. Hunter, what do you think their next move should be?
Yeah, I think it would be a bad idea to come back out and, say something in response to this on a public forum. I think it's a great idea to reach out to Abbie privately and work through whatever needs to still be worked through, mainly because Jeff Spring has said what he believes to be true. And if what Jeff Spring said is true, then why does he have to say anything else? Right. So I think that just leave it at that, because the more you post about it, the more you say stuff, the more you're going to keep rehashing. And then everyone already has a decision on this. It's not like all of a sudden you're going to get people that disagree with the Pro Tour to be like, oh, wait a second. And now they all flip flop. Like, this is a very polarizing issue. People are stuck in their ways. I do agree with Brodie that the Pro Tour does need to internally work on communication, because what I've seen is where this all went down really is that people don't agree with what Jeff Spring was saying within the Disc Golf Pro Tour organization. And so I think that's where a lot of this is getting confusing, is Abbie is being told stuff that seems like it's representing the Pro Tour, that Jeff Spring saying that's not the Pro Tour's stance, but it was someone from the Pro Tour, which makes everything confusing, which I think is where a lot of this is coming from. So really the Pro Tour needs to be like, hey, if X, Y, or Z happens, either here's our policy of how you respond, or here is the point person that they're pointed to, if it's about this, this, or this. So then the communication, at least everyone's on the same page and it's coming from one person. But that doesn't need to be a public thing. That just needs to be something the Pro Tour does going forward to avoid things like this happening again. And to back up what Abbie's saying, I do think in general security needs to be upped at Pro Tour events, just period, because like we've said before, it's better to do it now before something happens than wait for something to happen and do it in reaction.
Yeah, no doubt the messaging was a big part of this issue. Mike, where do you sit on this one?
Yeah, I think that Brodie kind of mentioned it's a unique situation, and we could be wrong, but it seems like based on what they tried to do in the past, they aren't that far off from what Abbie's wishing was happening, but financially they just can't go down that path. So it would be a mistake to talk about it again. Right after Abbie, the whole thing happened and she made her first statement, they did put out a statement, and that one immediately was already kind of basically poking holes in her story, kind of suggesting that a lot of things she said weren't the case. So to now just go he said, she said back and forth just really wouldn't do anyone any favors. And like Hunter said, I mean, people aren't going to change their mind on this overall situation anyway. So like to just keep poking a stick at the bear just doesn't make a ton of sense. And really your best bet is just to let this die down. It already has died down for the most part until the next time Natalie plays, because it's probably going to happen again. And if you just continue going and going, there's never going to be a lull in this drama. So I think that they should be taking all of their effort and energy around this thing and just getting perfect, water sealed, like can't do anything incorrectly the next time it happens, like going over the top, to having preset statements, to having, the security where it needs to be. And that could have avoided a lot of this, because a lot of what's being talked about now isn't even about the FPO division in terms of who's playing or not playing. It's the security. It's the things that opinions don't really matter. And it can just like be pretty easily agreed that everyone should have this moving forward.
Yeah. So Hannah, do you kind of agree with the group? Do you think there's anything to gain from bringing this back up?
Yeah, so I kind of agree with everyone's sentiment about it should not be brought back up publicly by the Pro Tour, especially. Hunter kind of said it, like, Abbie has said what she thinks was correct and is right and is real. And Jeff said a similar thing. The Pro Tour put out a statement. So now it would be like everyone's just contradicting each other again, or contradicting what they already said they stand for. And that just gets really divisive and confusing, and I don't think it's necessary. But yes, they should address some of the internal issues regarding communication, the security, the communication with players about what's tolerated, what isn't, and how security is going to be handled at different events. I do think it's also important to note that last year at MCO, we did see a delay in round one due to a very real and credible threat. And Abbie played the tournament last year, and according to her PDGA page, she played the entire tournament. So she did play 2 full rounds after the threat delay happened. I also think that it's really important that we allow people to speak up and give them a space to speak up if they ever feel like their safety is compromised. Because if I was in that situation, I would ring every bell, draw as much attention to it as possible, because you deserve to feel safe. Bare minimum. But that comes down to a security thing, not necessarily, it's not going to be changed or fixed, or she's not going to feel more safe the more things that are rehashed in public.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, because you do feel like, it was a rough look for the Pro Tour with all of the receipts that Abbie Wilson had. Like, it's one thing when somebody just comes out and says this isn't true, because then it really is like, okay, whose word do you? But like, there were a lot of things that felt like contradictions. If you really looked at them, I think, like what Hunter was saying, there's just a lot of communication policy things that were misinterpreted and not cohesive among the entire Pro Tour staff. I think that's the biggest issue here. But the good news is, like you all mentioned, like, I do think they are ultimately fighting on the same side. Like, I think, like Brodie said, they want the same thing. So that will kind of die this down to some degree. And then also, unless you've got us talking about it, this is disc golf at the end of the day. So things will just die down on their own too. That's not always the best thing for certain issues, but it is what will happen. So yeah, we'll see if that makes any more splashes. Hard to believe that it would if Abbie Wilson does not play any more events, because, unless some other player jumps into that role of protest. All right. Now we're going to talk about the Champions Cup. So we are approaching our first major of the year this weekend, the Champions Cup. What would you grade this major on its first few years of existence? How much does its venue and position on the schedule factor into that grade? So we'll just go for a letter grade here from each of you. Hunter.
Yeah, I think first off, I think we have to set the scale. So I'm putting USDGC as the A+ on the scale, right? That's not saying that USDGC can't do any better, but I'm saying when it comes to disc golf majors is where we're grading this. So I think if USDGC was an A+, the first few iterations of Champions Cup, I would say at least are a B+, maybe even like an A-. I think there's a few things that could be done better. Trophy being one of them. It needs time with prestige. The actual venue of WR Jackson, I don't think there was a great like vending / fan experience type thing. Same with Northwood Black, streaming, yada yada yada. But this major came out and set a very specific identity, which was the tough wooded major. It started with that. It carried that over into Northwood Black. The PDGA backed it up when it was going to Michigan, and they said, whoa, 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 everyone hates this. Let's change it to Northwood Black. And then a week from now, so it's too late, they're not changing it, it's official, we're going to a wide open golf course. And so now I take my B+, A- down to like a C, C-, because what is this major anymore? Like, now at this point, we just have another rotating major that's the exact same as, realistically now, the European major that all of a sudden rotates instead of just being the European Open, Worlds that rotates, and now Champions Cup. They're just the same thing under different labels. Why Champions Cup I'll at least give close to a C is at least you got to qualify. Like, at least there's a qualification process to get into it. It's not just like whatever. But we got to get back to the woods if you want this thing back up near the A.
Yeah, fair judgment. Mike, what does your grade look like?
Yeah, given that we know where it's about to happen, I'm just going to give it a grade based on that. And I'm right around a C, just kind of boring, whatever, because we already have a major that doesn't really make a ton of sense in Worlds, that it's just another tournament. Like, it's the best, it's the highest because we call it Worlds, but like, there's not really an identifying factor about it. It's finally going to be around the world here in the next few years. But so this turns into just another event at this point, if we're not going to at least have it in the woods. I mean, if majors already still don't really mean a ton yet, and it will over time, but there's tournaments I'd rather win than Champions Cup at this point that aren't majors. I don't think that we're doing any service. And, over time, the only thing that will make things prestigious and give us history is time. So we need time. But if you just keep bouncing around, it's just going to be, it doesn't matter how much time you have, right? To go from a wooded tournament to just wide open, to me, it's just going to be rotating around. The field's not that much different than normal fields other than the very bottom of it. And there's just nothing that special about this tournament at this point. And if we would have had this been and truthfully, the first 2 years of it, it wasn't that hard of a course. You had to shoot like 40 under to win in 4 rounds. So like, it wasn't that much harder than a normal course, but having it Northwood and having it be just this gritty thing where there's so many more people in the field that can win and so many things that can happen, like that would have been something memorable and something amazing to have. But now that it's wide open, like it just turns into another tournament to me.
Yeah, Northwood definitely had some flavor to it, no doubt about that. Hannah, are you kind of in the same area with your grade?
I actually am. I have like a rubric of 4 criteria, and my final grade for it was a C minus. So the first criteria is just how much I personally like it. And I include this because I think people will have similar opinions to me based on just loving majors, the extra day of play, the expectations, the excitement. It doesn't have the prestige of others, but that just comes in time, like Hunter and Mike both said. The next is schedule. I think it's great to have an early major. I like to see, I mean, it used to be even earlier than May, but I like to see what pros can do early on at an event that has the title of a major. Who's going to be the first major winner of the year? Will that impact how they perform at the other big events of the year? The venue, kind of like Mike and Hunter already said, I like Swenson Park, but I just don't like it for this event. I want it to be the tough wooded major because that was its identity. And without it, it kind of flounders a little bit in that area. And then the overall viewership performance, if you look at the Jomez numbers, historically, Champions Cup does not perform as well on Jomez as the events right before and right after it. In 2022, those events averaged 2.2% more views than Champions Cup. 2023, it was 13.1% more views for the final rounds. And then in 2024, it was 27.9% more views than Champions Cup. So not only is Champions Cup getting fewer views than the events right by on the schedule, it's actually trending downward, which is not a very encouraging comparison. So with all of that, my final grade for Champions Cup was a C minus.
Very interesting statistics there. Not sure what all plays into that.
Not really.
All right, well, let's hear it, Brodie.
No, I mean the statistics. I like the stats. I'm a stats guy. I'm facts over feelings, 100%. But I mean, with Jomez, it's the names, right? Like if you're looking at who's going to accumulate, my guess is if you would have looked at Jomez the day after, it would probably be a lot closer in those versus years after. Because if you look at the final card last year, who was on the final card?
Right.
So it's in YouTube, the algorithm is not going to stack up, but I love it. I will say this though. I agree with everyone. I think it's like a C, D, probably major at this point with the direction that they're going. A couple things though, that I'll say is I think the venue has a huge impact for sure. I think the position doesn't really matter all that much. I would still, I mean, heck, we don't even have Worlds sometimes be the final major or like the last hurrah, right? You know, you get the Disc Golf Pro Tour Championship kind of sneaking in there, trying to be like that 5th major. But I'll say the other thing that I think that's really important is like how you qualify, qualifications, having amateurs maybe make it into this one, something like that to make it a little bit different. And then the other thing I'll say is I'll just throw out a dark horse thing. It's called Champions Cup. Golf's got something called the Tournament of Champions. Why don't we just do that here? It's, you know, why don't we just have it of like, hey, if you win a tournament, you get invited to this event, and that's it. Just don't even make it a major. If you're going to make it go to all these courses that don't make any sense, that don't have, just make it a tournament that only champions get to go to. It's the Champions Cup.
It is kind of funny to me. I'm surprised in all of the golf copying that the Pro Tour does that they haven't latched on to the Tournament of Champions yet, because it seems like the first one. Maybe they haven't heard of it yet. Because
I mean,
they don't
some
know yet.
years
They
it
don't
would
know
be like Ricky Wysocki versus Paul Macbeth. Might just need a deeper field.
I mean, yeah,
Gannon
that's a
Burr's
great
got to
question.
play 9 rounds.
How many different? We would have had a field of what? Maybe 10.
It's
10 or
getting a
11
lot better. Yeah,
players?
you'd probably be close to 10 or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough because like on the PGA Tour, you have all those year-round wraparound events that like guys aren't even at, and there's just so you get some randos in there.
Yeah.
I would say the one thing I would give
you get also all the people that qualify for the Tour Championship. So that's why you automatically get like 30 plus.
That makes sense because I was like, man, that field, how is it not smaller?
Yeah.
The one thing I will say. As you talk about like the direction the tournament is heading, I would actually bump the grades slightly, maybe not above what y'all graded it, but I'd give it a little bump in the sense that they very quickly corrected the course and already have assigned next year's event back to a wooded course. So at the very least, and it's the bare minimum we're asking of them because it seemed pretty logical to everybody.
But like,
hey,
why not just do that this year?
But also
you have
out
so much time.
Like I said, it is the bare
said
minimum, but at least we know it's headed back on course.
But have they come out and said this is going to be a wooded major?
They captioned the post headed back into the woods, like kind of due to popular demand. Like I think they get it, you know.
The real issue
What's funny is they probably never intended it to be. They probably just
well, they intended it to always be at PDGA headquarters.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm just saying it started at WR Jackson.
Yeah.
And I think we just kind of all were like, oh, a wooded major.
Right.
And then they were like, we're going to Michigan. Everyone's like, no, you can't do that. It's the wooded major. And they're like, what? No, it's Champions Cup. What do you mean? It's not the wooded major.
Yeah, we definitely
we
did
forced their hand.
The PDGA, man, when they think about majors, they're just like, oh, it's a tournament with a bigger purse and we put the M next to it.
Yeah.
Like they're not thinking about anything else. Yeah, I don't know. This is gonna be a weird year for it, no doubt about that. Well, we're gonna talk about some
weird
more
year for majors, period, because we also have the back-to-back Europe ones.
We're going to talk about some European major situations here. So the PDGA recently announced that Estonia will host majors in 2026 and 2028 before hosting Worlds in 2029. What are your initial thoughts of this decision? Does it make sense to have this many majors in a small population center for the sake of their willingness to facilitate well-run events? Mike.
I mean, I guess it depends what you mean by does it make sense. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people there, but at least traditionally they haven't charged admission to go to like the European major. So revenue wise, I don't know how much they're relying on that or if they're going to change it because of that. As far as having majors prior to having Worlds there, I guess that kind of makes sense, but we still aren't to the point. Like these fields are going to be bad. Like they're going to be poor fields. And we already are struggling to have majors mean something as it is, as we just talked about. So now we're going to have a 3/4 of our normal field at a tournament across the world that's going to be on at 3 a.m. in the morning that the main like disc golf pro tour subscription people aren't going to like. I'm not getting up at 3 in the morning to watch Kristen win by 20 strokes. I might get up at 9:30 to watch it, but I'm not getting up at 3 a.m. So I don't think we're ready for this. I was all about having Worlds there every once in a while. I mean, and if it's not going to be the European Open, like it's still not clear. Like we're just throwing a random name on this other major, and there's going to be a European Open the year there isn't a Worlds. I don't know how they're getting this so wrong. Like it's not that hard of a thing to do. Just have a European major called the European Open, and if you want Worlds in Europe, that's fine, but have both, and not within 2 weeks of each other. But I think that until, and it might not ever be the case, but if you want majors to mean something, the field has to be at the top peak, and they just can't do that when they have these majors overseas.
Okay, so not a big fan. Hannah, where are you at? Do you agree with Mike?
Not fully. I was looking at it more of the location than necessarily field size, because I think there's a lot of almost prestige that comes with Estonia. And I'm not sure really what's going on with the majors that are happening in 2026 and 2028. I'm sure we'll find out more details in time. But the fact that they're hosting Worlds in 4 years is incredibly interesting. And I was looking at kind of the population density for Estonia, because everyone views it as a very small country. And you guys talked about it even on Grip Locked of where it would compare in total population compared to some of the states. So it's a population of just 1.4 million, but its population density is greater than that of each Utah, Vermont, and Kansas, which have all recently hosted world events. We also have to keep in mind that it's called a world title, not a US title. So it does make sense in theory that it would rotate through some European or other countries every so often. And I love Estonia for this because they demonstrated last year that they can host and run an incredible event. They're already looking for a second course that they can do for these majors, including one possibly on the presidential park where the president of Estonia lives, which is wild to think about. But I think that just cements how much Estonia gets behind disc golf. So as far as European countries go or places outside of the US to host majors or worlds, I think they are the perfect place. And I'm excited to see in 4 years, will Kristen Tatar be actively touring? Will she compete in it in her home place? Like, what will her role be in all of this?
Spin Zone. Maybe they're just setting up the Kristen retirement tour for one last Worlds in Estonia. It could be it's a dream scenario.
She's only 31. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, I say Brodie thinks he's going to play until she's 43. So
she could. I'm saying she could.
No, you're right.
She might not, but she could.
What do you think about all these Estonian majors?
Well, the first thing I think is I think it's very important to figure out where your hotbeds are and go and be there as much as possible. Go to places that matter. There's a reason why the Tour de France is in France and not the United States. Because if you did, can anyone name a cycling race in the United States off the top of their head?
Nope. Got me
Why?
there.
Why? Because it's probably because cycling's not that popular here. Most people means of transportation is not cycling, where in Europe, a lot of people cycle, but then also too, just the competition. There's football literally siphons out so much air when it comes to sports. And then you got basketball in there, baseball and hockey. And by the end of that, you got nothing. So here's the thing. This Worlds that's going to be happening over there is probably going to get more press from the actual country than any other Worlds has ever seen. So I think it's not that terrible thing. Now, I do agree with Mike. I think this is where it really sucks that there is an FPO and an MPO division, because when the Open's happening, guess what? If I don't want to watch guys that are like trying to make the cut, I don't wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to watch it. If I just want to watch who's contending on Saturday and Sunday, I can wake up at 7 or 8 and watch and be fine. FPO is going to take a hit, and that's just the way it is. People aren't going to wake up that early to watch FPO.
Yeah, the time zones are definitely a concern there. You just have to light up all the disc golf courses. Maybe the presidential park has that feature. Hunter, do you think this is an ideal spot for these European events?
Yeah, I think in general, one thing that we got to remember is we're looking at Estonia as it's a smaller population country, but we're ignoring that the countries all around it it's basically like states in the US. So to drive from Finland, from Tampere, Finland to where this is happening in Estonia is like a 6-hour drive. So that's like me driving to the beach, right? I've driven farther for Worlds. A flight from Berlin, Germany is less than 4 hours. From the UK is 4 hours. So traveling into this is just way more convenient when you only have one big event. So we're not necessarily worried about the population of just that country, worried about it being a banging event and it being the time where everyone can come in. That's why, for instance, Worlds this year, I just got an email inviting us to be media out there, which we're not going to Europe, but if we were, it'd be sick, because they're expecting over 10,000 spectators. That's more than double USDGC. That's hard to even fathom, but it's because you have all this press and attention where, yes, you're going to get a lot of people from Finland, but all these neighboring countries, it's like driving from another state over. So I think it makes a lot of sense, because they've proven that they can run a very good major. And to counter Mike's point, if we look at the European Open field strength last year, it comes in at 9th, beating out Champions Cup, Music City Open, Beaver State Fling, D-Glow. So the European Open, yeah, that is a valid historic take, but as players and companies want their players to get over there and players' pockets get a little deeper, them being in Europe, especially for majors, becomes more and more important. And it's going to be even deeper this year with Worlds being there too.
Well, I mean, the real kicker is at this point, I mean, by the time we get to 2029, half the season's going to be in Europe. So they'll just go over there once and then they'll just live most of their year there.
It's going the way I predicted. It's
the
going.
way I
I
predicted.
I predicted this months ago.
Well, so our next topic here is a fancy bit of topic, but this is actually very heavy into the European golf take. This is an interesting one here. So this fancy submission. Could FPO benefit from being more Europe-centric while MPO stays US-centric? So I guess you basically play most of their tour in Europe. So much of the top talent seems to be from Europe, and it would allow for courses to be designed specifically for FPO, but it would lose the built-in audience of MPO. What works more in FPO's favor? So is there any validity to this idea of just putting all the cards in FPO disc golf in Europe? Hannah, what do you think?
I struggle with this question, and I think personally, this is just my take, that if you want disc golf to grow, you would not want this to happen. A lot of us just listed the reasons of like who's getting up at 3 a.m. to watch Kristen Tatar in the final round. Just because I do it sometimes doesn't mean I want to do it all summer long, and it's not sustainable for most other people. So viewership takes a huge hit. If no one's watching FPO, then why is there even FPO to begin with? Why is the Pro Tour or anyone else putting money and funding into having a tour or FPO events? So the time difference is huge. But if we also look at the field sizes, the past 2 years, the field sizes at Champions Cup were 48 and 47 players, whereas the European Open for FPO, the field sizes were 26 and 27 players for the same years, with only a third of those for the European Open being from America. So I don't know that American female disc golfers have the funding or the ability to just go and live in Europe for a summer just because those courses are going to be FPO centric. And I think that the US, like the main tour in the US, would take a hit because I love being out there all day watching FPO and MPO, and I know I'm psycho about it. But you have a lot of the players travel together. So if Kristen is playing in Europe all summer, is Silver coming to the U.S.? If all these, like if other players are up and if the women are in Europe, are the men staying in the U.S.? Are they just living separate lives for all year?
Yeah, it definitely would break things up a little bit. It's tough to say the implications. Yeah, I don't know. Brodie, do you think there's any way this would work out in their favor?
I could see it potentially like down the road. I just think right now I've talked about this before, and it's like they can go the golf route where it's completely separate, 2 separate tours. They play different tournaments, they play different courses, play different weekends sometimes, or they can go like the tennis route where it's nope, everything's under the same umbrella. The men's tournament's happening at the same facility as the women's tournament, and they're coinciding together. They have to figure out which direction they want to go. I still think there's time for them to make that decision. I think if they go the golf route, I don't think the FPO would last. And that's due strictly just to the competition side. I think what really needs to happen, I don't know how it happens other than just time, is if, just using the 2 top players right now as examples, if there was 10 Kristen Tatars and 10 Holland Hanleys and like 10 Evelinas, I think the FPO would all of a sudden become a lot more interesting to watch and a lot more people would tune in. That's not the case right now. And I think that's ultimately what kind of hurts the grand scope and why I don't think the FPO would be able to succeed. And I don't think anyone's really arguing that they would by themselves. But in the future, if they were, it might not be the worst idea.
Okay. Hunter, do you think there's a future possibility of this happening, if anything?
I have no idea. I'm not going to try to predict the future. I think we can look at, the first thing is, could FPO benefit? So how could they benefit from being over there? I think that first off, the big benefit I see as a potential is I think the field could get deeper, mainly from the sense of, yes, we would lose pretty much the whole US field. I don't think anyone would argue that. But what does happen and what we've seen happen is the FPO players are treated more as athletes over in Europe. We've seen it with Kristen. We've seen it even with Evelina. Heck, we've even seen it with the MPO players like Niklas and Vino. But I think that it being taken more seriously over there means it would be on more female athletes' radars as, hey, this is a potential for me. Whereas in the US, if you're a very athletic female, disc golf's not on your radar. There's so many other things because the competition pool to get into college sports and professional sports is just not as deep as it is when it comes to male athletes. That's just a stat. So when it goes to Europe, with it being niche sports treated, bigger over there, FPO field could get deeper and more talented, but it would be at the cost of the entire Pro Tour and the FPO because they don't have the funds to do it, right? Like they right now, how it works is really, in my mind, the only way it can work for the foreseeable future, just because of how expensive it is to run 2 tours. And now you are cutting off all of the US viewership. So you're basically banking on DGN gaining all these European viewers to now sustain as simply just the FPO tour. It would crush the Pro Tour in Europe, and at least the FPO side. And if the Pro Tour decided to try to keep crutching it up, it might kill the whole Pro Tour in general.
Okay. Dramatic worst case scenario. Mike, wrap it up for us.
That's what I'm here for.
Is there anything to gain from a European FPO tour?
There's nothing to gain. First of all, short term, there's no world that they can split off and maintain the standards of the Pro Tour, be able to afford to have 2 tours. And I mean, this isn't, and that's not any knock on them. I mean, the LPGA is one of the only like women's sports that, compared to the men's sports, that don't get like financial help from the men's side, whether it's actual financial help like for the WNBA or like tennis, where they do just go to the same places as them. I think in a perfect world, we just figure out a way, whether it's venues or something done to courses, where courses are just made better for the FPO. Because realistically, that's the only thing that's the issue right now, is the courses are just kind of band-aids of easier, shorter men's courses. I also want to point out, I think it's kind of blown out of proportion. Like, only 5 of the top 20 players are from Europe in the women's field. Like, it's not that many people. It's more than the men, and it's more noticeable because Kristen's winning all the time. But if it was popped over there and we lost even half of the American women, like, the field would just be obliterated. There would be almost no one left. And so I think that the other point to make is, even if financially it made sense, even if the field could go, the field's not going to go, because a lot of these people are either friends or in relationships or tagging. Like, the fact that it would be in Europe isn't the issue. The issue is some of these guys can't afford to tour on their own as it is. They do it with other people, with friends. And so, like, to split up these people, it's just not going to work.
Yeah, I think almost the more interesting argument would be if a female tour were to start independently in Europe, and let's say they would, like, if it wasn't the Pro Tour trying to use their finances to support this as well, like, could that tour from like a smaller grassroots, more sustainable, like, they wouldn't be trying to just create the same exact model that the Pro Tour currently carries in the US, like, could that tour over time be more successful over there, with the idea that the European FPO field would gain strength quicker than it is in the US?
I don't think so, mainly because the notoriety you get from the Pro Tour by itself. So,
I actually disagree. I think it would.
You think it would get bigger than the Pro Tour's
because
FPO
we're
side?
thinking
I'm saying,
domestically
why wouldn't
in Europe
people
at
just
this
use
point.
that as, I'm dominating over here, I'm jumping to the Pro Tour where the sponsorship money viewership is?
My take on it would be, I think in Europe, it's much easier to get government backing, government funding, government exposure. We've seen it. And then also, you probably are also now pulling from a different pool of potential sponsors. Like, we've seen Kristen, we've seen other players over there get actual local sponsors that are decent sponsors. Nicholas has sponsors too that are European sponsors.
On the Pro Tour. Are they? Is that still happening?
Yeah, but they don't.
On a European
those
tour?
European brands don't care about.
They don't care
about American viewers. They only care about European viewers.
Correct. So that's what I'm saying is I think if you have if I had a guess, if I was starting a tournament just individually and I was starting it in Estonia versus starting it in Vermont, my guess would be it would be easier for me to find disc golf sponsors or sponsors to sponsor the disc golf tournament in Estonia than it would be in Vermont.
Yeah,
but you have
that would be my
the
take.
NPO side alongside it. My thing is, how much is Kristen's pedestal she's put on shortened if she's not the golden child on the Pro Tour? Not that it's a US tour, but winning European Opens, winning events in Europe on the Pro Tour, winning major titles over here, where the events have notoriety because they're on
the majors aren't on the Pro Tour either. Those aren't connected
but
at all.
It's all tied in. But yeah, so she can
Not
still play
really.
majors. But I'm saying a lot of it comes from her dominance of the top level disc golf. If you just take away FPO and MPO still there, and there's still FPO happening, that is still going to be seen as the top level disc golf. It's similar to how the NBA, Luka Doncic and Giannis are on the pedestal they're on, not because of what they did in Euro leagues, but because of what they did in the NBA, which is seen as the top level basketball.
I would wager that if Kristen didn't play a single event on the Disc Golf Pro Tour and won the World Championship, she would be treated very similarly in Estonia.
But she already has a resume
as the world champion in disc golf.
I think maybe now.
I don't think those people have. I don't think those people have a pulse on the Disc Golf Pro Tour events. I don't think those people are paying attention to what's going on with Champions Cup this week.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. Tough to say because there is a point of like. Though a lot of the people that get behind Kristen, it's to focus on her European audience. Like a lot of her recognition probably comes from this fame and success she's acquired in an American fan base. So it's an interesting one. I don't know. I do think.
But I'm saying the Pro Tour side, like if this happened, a European tour started, the Pro Tour's European presence would still be there. So in this world that's being created here, the Pro Tour is still the bigger tour because of MPO. So like that's what I'm saying is those events would still exist. You're not going to, if you have an FPO only tour and FPO is still happening on the Pro Tour, you're not going to usurp or take over the prestige of the PCS Sula Open.
Well, let me ask you this, Hunter.
Well, a lot of it has to do with the field and the players.
I'll say, what if the FPO players on this other tour, like what if they were just playing? Like there's no rules that say you can't play Pro Tour events if you're on a different tour. So like what if you were
then sure if they're also playing Pro Tour events, they would get notoriety from winning Pro Tour events.
So but like maybe the question is more so like if the FPO players just camped out in Europe, so they would play the stretch of Pro Tour that happened in Europe to kind of submit their resume there, but then also stay over there the rest of the year.
Why?
I don't even remember the point of the question anymore.
I'm just saying when
I didn't make it.
It's like when if that happened and all of a sudden you have a Holland Handley with 9 wins and a Kristen Tatar with 5 wins, we can argue to a blue in the face.
I think you can remove the FPO side of this. I think it really boils down to it would be interesting to see what a more European heavy tour would look like.
If you removed FPO, then we can be on the same page for sure.
I'm just saying I don't think FPO, MPO both really matter. I think the question really boils down to is are there a lot of advantages? Are there a lot of benefits? And do those outweigh the disadvantages and the negatives of maybe having more events over in Europe? And maybe it is one of those things of where, hey, the only reasons why these events are so big is because, like Hunter was saying, there's only a couple of them. Right. To where now if you have 12 events in Europe, does that kind of saturate it to where each one's not that important anymore? Yeah. Or like you don't get really
I still think, and there's no way to disprove what I'm about to say because we won't know till it happens, but I think that is a huge reason, mainly because I still say that if there was one disc golf event, just one disc golf event that's a major in Charlotte, and that's the only opportunity that the whole Southeast has to go watch disc golf. And disc golf's the same popularity over here. So there's still the same amount of players, all of that. I think we'd be able to get 15, 20,000 people out to that one event.
Hunter, there was a ton of events in Europe last year before the European Open.
Yeah, but they were just Pro Tours. I'm saying if there's one major.
Oh, okay.
Because this is the first time World is coming over there, so of course 10,000 people. But even at that, there's still only because the European Open was the one with the deepest field. So if you wanted to go make sure you're going to see your favorite players, that's the one you're going to. Because it was similar. Like we went to the weekend at the Wells Fargo Championship just for half our favorite players to not be there, and that sucked. We were bummed out because they didn't make the cut. What the heck, Jordan Spieth? So it'd be a similar thing of like, if I go to the European Open, everyone that I have a chance of seeing is going to be there. If I go to the Crocol Open, I might miss some people.
Yeah. I mean, that you can't disprove it.
That's what I'm saying. It's a tough one because like that's my opinion.
This year we have the two
but
majors
still,
back to back. Let's see if they draw a huge crowd both times.
Yeah, and I think they will.
And then who are you?
Well, no, because I think it will, just because I think the European Disc Golf Festival is a spectacle and the other's Worlds.
Well,
And we already know Worlds is getting 10,000. And the big thing is, if you're going to one from a different country, why not stay an extra week? You can watch both.
I'll go back to this is, leaving the course, I might see 3 to 4 kids in the United States, and I might sign someone or take a photo or a selfie with like 3 or 4 kids. European Open, there's nothing like it. There's like hundreds of kids. And so that I will say it's a completely different culturally. It's respected completely different over there than it is in the States. And so I'll double down. I think the way that it's headed is I think disc golf will grow more in Europe than it will in the United States.
It very well could. We will have to find out. Foundation headquarters in Sweden coming soon. Stockholm headquarters. All right, finals here. Hannah and Hunter all tied up.
Thank God.
Okay, and we'll say Hunter, you've got the most wins, so we'll let Hannah decide if she wants to go first or second here.
I would like to go first.
Okay. Nobody ever actually. I think we got like 1 or 2 people go second, and it's
Well, you
always
risk
like,
it.
oh,
If you go second, you
it's
risk them
risky,
taking
very
it.
risky.
Which is interesting. You got to win to just have to defer. That's interesting.
Yes. That is how it works. Not
I need to
fair.
start
It's not
losing
fair at
more.
all. All right. Finals topic. So the President's Cup roster for 2025 was recently announced, once again showing the Americans have a large talent advantage overall. If you were to make make team rosters specific to U.S. states, this is where players were born, which state would have the strongest team, and do you believe they could best the current team Europe? For the sake of creativity, let's assume all players, past and present, are available and in their prime. So quite a loaded question there. What did you come up with?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, there's several great states you could choose from. If you really look into it, which I did too much, there's Florida, there's Texas, there's Ohio even would be surprisingly good. There's so many answers, but I went with California with a total of 70 Elite Series /NT wins, 35 major wins, including 12 world titles, and 7 master major titles. My team would include the GOAT, Paul McBeth, 3-time world champion Nate Doss, the legendary Scott Stokely, world champion Greg Barsby, Elite Series winner James Proctor, the father of disc golf himself, Ed Hendrick, world champion Katrina Allen, and 11-time major winner Carrie Berlogger. Now, I know the U.S. has a clean sweep so far for President's Cup, but it also feels like this hypothetical primetime team from California could beat Europe still. I would have confidence in the 3 world champions to not only win in match play, but to win each of their groups, giving them Team California 21 points. Scott Stokely, James Proctor, and Katrina Allen would still be able to fight for some ties in match play and get 3rd or even 2nd in their group play to gain a few points needed to surpass 26 and guarantee victory. Until Europe has a few more Nicklases and another Kristen, America, past or present, simply has to be the favorite. Okay.
California, I think that was Hunter's pick as well. Do you have another state that could stop? Because there's definitely a lot of names out there. Because like a lot of the Californians are definitely more old school players. I don't know if they're complete juggernauts, but they obviously have some very good players.
Yeah, no, I was originally going with California. I thought about switching to Texas. I ripped up my California research note, and then she just handed me the gold mine by listing her California players. And Hannah, you made the mistake of just valuing titles from the history. We're talking 11 majors of an FPO field that she might have been playing herself. I don't know. So this is what we got is I'm going with California, and I'm just going to build a California team that will teach her California team how to play disc golf. Sorry, Ed Hedrick, but here we go. First off, Paul McBeth, of course. We're going prime Paul McBeth, which I don't know if you mentioned that. My headphones fell off when I was getting my research, but I can pick him from any time. So prime Paul McBeth, 2015 McBeth. That's important. James Proctor, shocked he wasn't on that list.
He was.
Okay, good. Then I'm going 1048, Josh Anton. So we're going back a little bit.
Oh.
Josh Anton, he almost got to 1050. Give me 1036 rated Steve Rico. If you've watched old school disc golf coverage, you know this guy deserves to be on here. Greg Barsby. And then I'm going to take Andrew Miranda because I think that modern day players, Ed Hedrick was throwing an ultimate frisbee. He needs distance. Andrew Miranda is going to beat him out, I think. Now on FPL, I'm going to take Katrina Allen, as you mentioned. But again, I'm going to more modern day player. I'm taking Jessica Weiss. Now I will say I'm throwing Jessica Weiss to the Wolves. I'm giving her Kristen because no one's beating Kristen.
Yep.
So the secondary player, who gives a rip? Katrina Allen in her prime is going against Evelina Salonen, and it's going to be the Throwers Championship because neither of them can putt, even in their primes. So really, that's a toss-up. One of them, who knows where it's going? Prime Paul Macbeth is taking Niklas. I'm probably just going to throw Angie Miranda at Simon Lizotte to just accept that loss. And then I like my chances of going James Proctor versus Vino, prime Josh Anton against Jakub. You got prime Steve Rico against Albert Tam, and then you got prime Greg Barsby against Jona Heinonen. I like my chances there of my California team versus Team Europe. I really think the only one we might lose is the Kristen and Simon, and I think we're cleaning house everywhere else if Katrina Allen can make a few putts.
There was definitely some omissions from Hannah's list, but ultimately they were only a little bit different. I mean, and she did get to that one first. What does the Texas roster look like?
Mason Ford, Bradley Williams.
Emerson
Paige
Keith.
Pierce was born
Emerson
in Texas.
Keith, Paige Pierce, which you can go prime Paige, but I mean, you're still not beating Kristen.
Are all of our good
Ohio,
players just
you
spread
can
out
get
too
Ricky
much?
Wysocki in there. Iowa, you can bring in Des Redding and Gannon Burr, but you got to have 6 MPO players.
What about Georgia with the Robinson brothers?
Ooh.
You got to have
There's that.
6.
What?
Ohio.
You got to have 6 deep. It's just.
Well,
it's
I didn't know if
Yeah.
there's some dark horse Georgia people.
I went
don't
through
know.
like 30 states, and then I thought I'd have a good state, only to find out that so and so was like Parker Wilkes, born in Hawaii. What the frick's going on there, Park? And so California was the only answer, and my only hope was you left some great players off the list.
Florida would have been a good option too, but
Listen, 11-time major winner, whoever she just mentioned, we never seen her play in the modern field. So listen,
You've seen
listen
Jessica
here, man,
Weiss, though.
Mr. MJ arguer. Like we don't know. We don't know. Hunter's done with the 80s. He does not care. Go ahead.
I will say 4 of Carrie's majors that she won were in FPO. Early 2000s, but you said prime, so I picked
Hey, there were
people's
good
prime.
players in the early 2000s. Juliana, Dez. There were some dogs out there.
Josh Anton could have been the GOAT if the
I
whole
almost picked
RV
him.
thing didn't
If it
happen.
weren't for that
so you just
RV,
got to think
man,
through
that
that. You
pesky
know, I
RV.
mean,
Yep.
he was almost 1050 rated in like 2012. I also could have swore up one tree and down another Nico LaCastro is from California. He's
St.
not.
Louis.
It's St. Louis.
He's
man.
not. Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
for certain he was, but he's not.
We literally went to his home basically.
I knew that. I just thought he was originally from California.
No, he just claimed it there for a while. That's the hard thing with these disc golfers is like they were claiming the weirdest places because they all were strewn about there. None of them had homes.
Well, that's like
They were-
I thought Ricky was from South Carolina until I googled it. Ohio.
he's always rocking that Ohio State jersey, man.
I knew that, but I mean that. So everyone does.
Even Brodie. All right,
Go
well,
Buckeyes.
Hannah, you are our victor today. First
I
win.
stand by my Cali team.
First win.
They win.
Nice.
First win.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Only took what, like 4 or 5 shows?
4. Yeah, this is 4.
Very nicely done. Very nicely done. What do you have to say? Give a call to action to any of our other women viewers who need to get on the show.
Oh, geez. I would just say, well, I had a lot of fun in this episode, and Hunter, that was a really fun final question. For all women who kind of want to get into disc golf or content creation or whatever, and it scares you, it scares me, and I'm still trying to do it. You don't get better or you don't accomplish things if you don't put yourself out there, and it's not as scary as it seems. And at the end of the day, it's also not that important, even if it feels super, super important. This is just disc golf. It's just a podcast. It's just content. So although it's something we live for, you'll be okay. Just try it out.
That's
Can I
right.
put you on the spot and ask you a question?
Oh my gosh.
Sure.
Oh, here we go.
100 men or 1 gorilla?
That's a simple one.
What's going around right now?
This is tough.
This should have just been
I
one of
have-
the topics.
I have 5 brothers. So it already feels like I'm surrounded by men all the time. But if we're talking 100 strangers, I would do a gorilla.
Oh,
Wow, this would have been a great topic, Trevor.
I gotta
We
find.
missed-
I gotta
Are you
find.
strictly team men, Brodie?
Yes,
I've seen
100
men.
men.
100 men.
Well, there's important things to be said.
Yeah, the
Are
context is
all the men dedicated to this.
yes. That's the 100% is like if you see someone get
I have
annihilated, you
laughed
can't run
so-
away.
Look at this.
I've laughed
Look at this.
so hard the last few days. What is it?
That's all you need to see. Like, look
What
at
is-
that. You think they took weapons in there to get that gorilla?
Demonetized.
And
What
there's
is
like,
You're
that?
demonetized.
Wait,
it's,
Oh
just,
what-
my
it's an African tribe carrying a gorilla. They did it. There's only like 10. There's like 20 of them, and they got them. And
I've
they
laughed
got
so
weapons.
hard
It's
the
not like
last
they
few
have
days
machetes.
Watching people be like, everybody's face when the first guy gets turned into soup. Like,
So, yeah, no, we're losing a
Turn
few
into
good men.
soup.
That
when
probably
you're-
started
when
as
you're
100
player
men and we're down to
96
20.
and you see the 50th guy get thrown across.
Well, you
Yeah,
can't
gotta-
be going one at a time.
No, you gotta. Yeah,
You're
that's
just swarming them.
that
There's a
was-
few people are dying for
that
sure.
was the
yeah.
context. Is if it is like one of those really cheesy movies where they take on the bad guy one at a time for some
Yeah.
reason, the gorilla's winning.
Yeah.
But
us.
if you just
so funny,
bum
man.
rush him,
Got 180 million views on Twitter.
that's
all right.
crazy. That's crazy.
And that was our final debate of the night. If you'd like to submit any topics, you can scan the QR code here on the screen. They can be as ridiculous as you'd like. Make them as creative as possible. You guys have really upped the game this season as far as your topic submissions. They've been consistent. They've been good. So keep them rolling in. And if you've gotten your topics picked before, that means you must be good at this. Keep them coming. We'll see you next week.